All right.
You said you do this again, huh? Here's some. You open that. I have a scan from. Brown. Helio.
Let's see.
So the new one will take a scan from.
I do if you have an extra.
Yeah.
All right, now, folk, I want to say this. During the last election, we had 4 candidates to pick from. Actually, you might not only know of 2, but actually 4 running for president in the race. Well, in 1992, there were 3 candidates. Their names were George Bush, Bill Clinton. All right, I've got to do better than this. And Ross Perot. A lot of persons did not like either candidate to the top, and they voted for Perot. Now, for the first time in all of history, Perot actually, in the polls, led both Clinton and Bush. You know, he was a third-party candidate who had about 40% of the vote, but then as Perot was forced to open his mouth and to make stances, every time he opened his mouth, he turned people against him. And he wound up with only 16% of the vote. But here's the point I want to make, really. Everybody who voted for Perot did not know it, but they were actually voting for Clinton. Because Perot got almost all of his votes from people who would have been Bush supporters. Had it not been for Perot, Bush would have won the election, and Clinton would have lost. And again, during the last election, one of my daughters told me she did not like the major candidates. They looked corrupt, and hey, folk, it was hard to tell which one of the 2 top candidates was more morally corrupt than the other. They were both really bad. So she voted, and we tried to tell, hey, a vote for a third party or fourth party candidate is really almost like a vote for the bad candidate, for the worst candidate. The point I'm trying to make is generally don't vote for third parties. It helps guarantee that the bad guys are going to win. Oh. Anyway, all right. Maybe you can tell which side I was on, but Bill Clinton won the election because of Ross Perot. And Ross Perot was to run again in 1996 and get the same number of votes, and again, Bill Clinton was to become a 2-term president. Now, Bill Clinton was a Democrat. Your book states, and every other history book I've seen on the matter also states, that Bill Clinton ran the government, ran the economy like a Republican. This was even said at the time he was in office. Hey, he's running the country like a Republican. He got rid of public welfare in Washington and sent it to the states until the federal government does not participate in much public welfare anymore. It's now up to the states. Clinton began to move more and more to the right. Yet, I remember when Bill Clinton was elected, a friend of mine at Lockheed said if he's elected, there'll be a scandal every week. There wasn't one that often, but there practically was. And he had been found to have had numerous affairs, and some of them were not really believed to be consensual, but were actually rape. Now, the big affair, though, was the one with Monica Lewinsky, and the Monica Lewinsky affair, with all respect, was probably consensual. I mean, there's no doubt that was consensual. But financial, yes. His wife was involved in some shady trading of cattle futures. Now, if you know anything about the futures market, and folk, unless you really, really are an expert, stay out of it. 3 out of 4 people who engage in a futures market lose, and when you lose, you're going to lose big time. But she managed to rig the market somehow and make a windfall profit from trading cattle futures, doing a type of trading that was illegal. Anyway, and then there was the Whitewater, and try as I might, I once tried to understand what Whitewater is about, Whitewater Gate, but anyways, all these gates, Whitewater Gate, Cattle Gate, Futures Gate, again, every presidential scandal until recently, presidential scandals have been known as Gate, this gate and that gate. Bill Clinton told us in his memoirs that for a while he was sleeping on one of the White House couches. His wife kicked him out of their bedroom. Now, folks, this is told by in his memoirs. This is not hearsay. Anyway, do you have a comment?
No.
But he told that in his memoirs. But what was finally told later, and it was rumored at the time, was that he and his wife were getting such a heated argument in their bedrooms that the Secret Service actually knocked on the door and warned them, hey, if one of you comes out hurt, there's going to be serious political consequences for this. This was told, and it later enough Secret Service said, yes, it was true. Yeah.
And this is a known fact down at the, you can go to the GBI, they'll willingly say to you that when Mrs. Clinton, when she would come out, they were forced to turn and face the wall and not look at it when she walked by. She had the Secret Servicemen turn, if the camera wasn't around, they had to turn and
Because she was hurt, injured, or
no,
something?
no, she just didn't want.
She didn't want to be photographed.
She just, no, she just didn't like it because she didn't like, because she thought that after all that stuff happened with the affair, all that stuff, she thought that they were pretty much cloaking for her husband. You know?
Oh,
So
okay.
she would have
All
to
kinds
face-
of stories. Some of them might not be
It's
true.
strong, it's just something, and the only reason I know is because I had been trained and they
Well,
were.
it was like, President Roosevelt, Franklin did not have himself pictured in a wheelchair, or when he was pictured as though he was standing up, but he wasn't really standing up, folk. He was sitting like on a high chair, and it looked like he was standing, but actually he was being propped up. He was not able to stand. But he did not want the country to know that. Today we all do know it. Speaking of, I mentioned the Presidential Library in Jimmy Carter's. President Roosevelt's home is also in Georgia, and it's open for public display. I've been there at least twice, maybe 3 times, down there in Warm Springs. Now, all right, anyway, Clinton signed for medical leaves for women who are about to give birth to a child for adoption or the family illness, taking care of sick family members. Now, folk want to say about taking care of sick family members. A couple of semesters ago, a woman felt like that because she was spending so much time taking care of her father, that she should be exempted from doing the work in my class. So she went to the department manager, to the department head to complain. But the secretary met her first. If you know anything about these offices here, usually you have to go through the secretary to get the department manager, the department head. At Lockheed, he was department manager. Here is department. You have to go to the secretary first. The secretary told her, you have to do the work Mr. Cunningham assigned anyway. Never mind you're taking care of your father. You have to do the work anyway. So this family leave does not necessarily apply to college students or family. If you're going to get a grade, you have to do the work. All right. 1996, the Republicans ran Bob Dole. I'm not going to ask that, but again, Ross Perot kept the Republicans from winning the White House. But Ross Perot could not keep the Republicans from winning Congress. Now, all 4 of these presidents, whether it be Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush, that's 5, so I'll take rounds. George Bush 41, Bill Clinton, George Bush 43, and Barack Obama. All of them had to have faced a Congress that was of a different party than theirs. In other words, if they were Republican, they at one point had Democratic Congresses. If they were Democrat, they had Republican Congresses. All of them had to face, and it hampered them in doing what they wanted them to do. Now, impeachment. Bill Clinton was impeached. Began a Republican Congress. They only needed a simple majority in the House. So in the House of Representatives, I think they got the impeachment vote through by about 2 votes. So the impeachment went to the Senate. In the Senate, they needed 67 votes. They actually got about 52 votes in the Senate, but it was not enough. Excuse me. Bill Clinton, like Andrew Johnson, was not removed from office, but he was impeached. He was impeached for 2 things: abuse of power and obstruction of justice. And he was not impeached because of his affair with Monica Lewinsky. He was impeached because he lied about it under oath. It's called perjury. Lying under oath will get you in trouble. Now, folk, every one of us, when we ask a question we're not expected to be asked at the spur of the moment, might quickly make up something and tell what amounts to a lie that we wouldn't say if we had time to think about it. But perjury is a special kind of perjury. Is where you swear an oath to tell the truth, usually with one hand on the Bible and the other hand raised toward heaven. You swear an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And if you lie then, that's a special kind of lying. And a lot of persons have gone to jail for the crime of perjury. Bill Clinton got away with it. He lied under oath. He said he had never had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, but this sounds good. Monica Lewinsky had a dress that proved that Clinton's DNA was on the dress. This proved that he had an affair with her. Under Bill Clinton, interest rates were lowered. However, your book makes it sound like the income inequality is a bad thing. Everybody should make equal and focus. That's where I disagree with the authors of the book. Income inequality, I guarantee you, is something we will never achieve unless everybody loses all the money and we all go down in poverty together. Like the American Indians said before in the North America, they had income equality. Nobody had any income at all. And there was no rich, there were no poor. Wasn't it wonderful? Anyway, and they wound up getting displaced and conquered and moved out of their homeland. Anyway, Bill Clinton tried to reduce the deficit. And about balancing the budget has only been balanced 3 times since the Great Depression. Harding did in the early 1920s, and I believe Coolidge did. But thanks to the Depression, Hoover and all the presidents weren't able to, except for Richard Nixon balanced the budget 1 time, and Bill Clinton did it twice. Now, I have heard, folk, that it's been said that what really made the country so prosperous under Bill Clinton was nothing Bill Clinton did. It was something that happened over in the Far East. The Japanese stock market, as well as the South Korean stock market, are found to be corrupt. And everybody took the money from the Japanese stock market in droves. The year was 1987, and the Japanese market has not recovered to this day. So when people took their money out of the Japanese market, a lot of them, including Japanese people, put their money in American markets because the American markets were believed to be more honest. And the American markets prospered under Bill Clinton. Okay, thank you. I probably won't have these ungraded before Monday. Anyway. The rest of the book is talking more about globalization. Bill Clinton lowered a number of trade barriers, in other words, tariffs. And he was advised not to, but he did it anyway. And here's the problem, that he passed the problem on to our present president. Other countries had really, really high tariffs on American products, and this you have the figures to prove. For instance, in Japan, they put a really high tariff on American meat to keep our meat out. And they put a high tariff on American automobiles to where the people only buy their Japanese cars. But the other countries would put a high tariff on American products, while Bill Clinton lowered the tariff on American products being shipped abroad. A lot of your African nations got involved in civil wars. The United States started to get involved, but we had remembered Vietnam. The United States did send troops. 18 soldiers were killed. There was a big public outcry in the United States, and the United States and UN largely withdrew and let Africa fight its own wars among itself. In Yugoslavia, a dictator, a communist dictator named Tito, held everything together. Now, with all respect, Tito lived long enough to die of old age. He was not deposed, but as long as he was alive, he kept order. When he died, factionalism came in. Then came a man named Milosevic. I'm not sure I can spell this right without looking.
I-L-O-S-E.
S.E.
S-E-B-I-S.
Thank you. All right, Milosevic. Here's a story. The Muslims living in that territory, who had been there for hundreds of years, began practicing terrorism. So Milosevic moved in and started killing all Muslims, basically what amounted to genocide. The NATO, the United States, and the United Nations condemned Milosevic, forcing Milosevic the bargaining table to bargain with these people. After a time, though the pressure on Milosevic was relaxed, he did it again. Milosevic was captured and put in prison, but he died before his trial could take place. He developed cancer and died of cancer. But he was going to get really, really tough on the terrorists, and the result was he brought the whole world down on him.
Where was he from?
What's that?
Where was he from?
Oh, this is what used to be Yugoslavia. Serbia, I believe Milosevic was a Serb, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Serbian, yeah.
He was a Serbian. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's Serbian. And the United States wound up getting involved. Bill Clinton sent in troops to bomb, and we were fighting on the side of the Muslims against the Greek Orthodox Christians. Again, if you could go back in your history to find out how the Muslims got there and how the Greek Orthodox had gotten there, but the two sides have been at odds from the beginning. Now, when the Iraqi war ended, Saddam Hussein was told he could not arm, but eventually, and inspectors were sent. Well, eventually Saddam Hussein kicked the inspectors out. Bill Clinton responded by bombing parts of Iraq. Now, folk, I'm running out of time for it, but here's something I really want to say. Eventually, we went to war with Iraq a second time. And the second time we made sure the whole purpose of war was to depose Saddam Hussein. All right. When we deposed Saddam Hussein, okay, I was asked by a young Arab girl, she asked, did things get better or did things get worse in Iraq after Saddam Hussein was deposed? And the only way I could answer that question, only one way, folks. I had to say things got worse after Saddam Hussein was deposed. Now, if any of you say I could have said something different, your comments are welcome. What's the point I'm trying to make? You get rid of a bad guy you think's a bad guy, and oftentimes you get chaos. For all Saddam Hussein's faults, he could keep order. Well, as soon as Saddam Hussein got gone, ISIS came on the scene and created terror, and ISIS just attacked the country just as recently as 6 days ago, we attacked Sri Lanka. ISIS came on the scene. Saddam Hussein would not have allowed that, we don't believe. Essentially, we got more terrorism than ever. Yeah.
ISIS is still a thing.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, ISIS was defeated. Yes, they're still here.
What?
Okay, I know, it sounds like I contradicted myself just now. We did defeat them in their homeland, where they started from. They're in Syria. But they're spread out now over the globe more. They're in Africa, they're in Sri Lanka, we now know. Oh yes, they're still here. They wound up being blamed for the attacks on Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday. Again, I've got to be careful when I talk about something recent, because what I say, I could get out of the class and turn my car radio on and find out it's false. That's happened to me more than once. But based on what I'm told now. But the point I'm making is, right now, there's another, in Libya, they had an evil dictator, Muammar Gaddafi. We got rid of Gaddafi, and things in Libya are in chaos. And right now, there's a really bad dictator ruling Syria. The Russians are for him. Assad is his name. I tell you what, I have to say, I hope the man stays in power for the simple reason I'm fearful that when he's kicked out, something worse will take his place. If you find fault with what I'm saying, I can't say as I blame you, I find fault with it. But right now, in the Muslim world, Tunisia is fighting Tunisia. Libya is fighting Libya. Egypt is still fighting Egypt. Syria is fighting Syria. Arabia is fighting, I believe, Yemen or some such place. You get the picture, and this turmoil just goes on and on and on, and the refugees from these turmoils are spreading all over Europe. And they might eventually bring down European civilization such as it was, or such as it is. Anyway, oh yeah, your book has something interesting to say, and some of you might have heard it before. Nike. Some of you might be wearing Nike shoes right now. Nike pays its Chinese workers $1.50 to produce a pair of Nike shoes. I mean, this is in your book, folk. I can give you the exact page if you wanted me to. Nike pays workers $1.50. These shoes are sold in the United States for more than $100. Have any ever heard this outside of this class? Or?
Yes.
You have? Yeah. I've heard it before too, but it's actually in your book, folk. And again, with a little bit of research, I could find the exact page. It's in chapter 31. But, and most of your Chinese, I mean, okay, all of you I think know. Where does Walmart get most of the stuff it sells? Anybody know?
China.
China, in one word. China. And Chinese workers are low paid. And I know a businessman in Calhoun, when I lived in Calhoun, who Walmart moved into Calhoun. Wasn't it great and wonderful? And most of your businessmen had to close shop. Now there was one man who said he was working at Lockheed while his wife ran a store, but he could stay in business because he got all this money from Lockheed while his wife managed the store, so he didn't have to really pay. So it's all, even if he was only making $2,000 or $3,000 a year, which is not enough for a man to live on even then, he could stay in business as long as he was making any profit at all, because he didn't have any employees other than his wife. So he didn't have to pay her a wage because she was his wife. And so he stayed in business. He was in the sporting business. But this other man, forced out by Walmart. Again, what's the problem with letting foreign business in? Cheap labor. They will destroy. They'll undercut your economy and put a lot of your own people out of work. And the Chinese do. I'll tell you something about the Chinese. A lot of the shopping I do anymore is from China on eBay. I can get stuff from China that would cost me $100. I can get it for as little as 10, 15 bucks. I keep a fish pond at home, and recently my fish pond that's 6 years old started leaking, so I ordered a new fish pond tarp from China for much, much, much cheaper than I could have gotten it in the United States. Much cheaper. Again, facts of life, folk. If any of you don't like what I'm saying, your input is welcome. I'm going to try my best not to argue with you, but I'll let you say your lines. Now, a lot of these poor countries say that they benefited from American businesses, but a lot of foreign countries were hurt when the United States began subsidizing American farmers, and this meant that American farmers then could produce crops at the expense of foreign farmers. A lot of foreign automobile plants moved to the United States. I think you may know that Kia now has some automobile plants in the United States. So does Toyota, manufacturers, and they make a profit too. Using America, they hire American workers. They hire American workers and make a profit. Kia and Toyota is doing this, and I don't know who else. Anybody know?
BMW.
Who?
BMW has.
BMW. Okay. BMW.
Carolina.
South Carolina. I believe Kia has a plant here in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken.
It's in really it's like West Georgia. It's like going to Alabama.
It's in LaGrange.
Is it LaGrange?
LaGrange. Okay. But Kia, in other words, these foreign. So some of these, it does sometimes work both ways. Spanish-speaking people. Now, your TV companies anymore are now putting out shows in Spanish. And I can get a lot of Spanish TV shows, and I can get pull in a few Spanish-speaking radio stations. 30 years ago, you had to go to the Mexican border to do that, but now you can. You go to Lowe's, and you'll find the Lowe's signs contained in English and in Spanish. Hardware is Ferreteria in Spanish. If any of you can pronounce that better than I can, your input is welcome. Anyway, All right, in the year 2000, George W. Bush was elected in a close election, and here's what I wanted to say about Bush. The Supreme Court wound up giving him the election, and that is ironic because he had often been critical of the court. But the Supreme Court ruled that the Florida returns that were in his favor were the ones that should count. During his administration, the No Child Left Behind Act, I'm going to write this down, no was intended by the federal government to help make sure that every child got an education. Folk, it's impossible. It's like our teachers used to say when I was a kid, I can teach you, but I can't learn you. You have to learn yourself. I can only try. Eventually, the program was abandoned because it was never funded, and the federal government got out of the education business and turned it over more and more to the state and local governments. This is in your book, folk. The United States was attacked on September 11, 2001 by Al-Qaeda. The terrorists blamed the United States. So as a result, the Patriot Act was passed, and the Patriot Act, and I'm going to write that down, Patriot Act gave the government more authority to spy on you than ever before. In other words, supposedly, if the government wants to know where I am, they can find me because I carry my cell phone with me. Now, before the class started, I turned the thing off. But once I turn it back on, they'll know where I'm at. Have any of you heard this outside the class? The government, you heard it. The government knows where you are anytime you have your phone on. And also, the government is reported to be able to listen in on your phone conversation. Now, personally, I don't care what they hear about me. I don't say anything that I'm bothered by to have the whole world listen to. I don't care. But they can listen in on your phone conversation and know where you're at, know where you're located all the time. So keep that in mind when you're on the phone. Somebody might be listening. For a young person, I know that's kind of scary. And for me, in my case, like I say, I'm not planning to overthrow the government. And I'm not doing anything else that I know of that I shouldn't be, so I don't care what they hear about me. They're just wasting their time if they're listening in on me. All right. Obama pulled American troops out of Iraq, and the result was more chaos in Iraq, as I've already mentioned. All right, folks, I've got to quit. When I was going through my notes, I tried to pick out stuff to talk about that I knew would be on the test. So those of you who were here benefited. Now,